I'm going to get started on the meeting right now. I know that a couple people are joining us, but it is 5:10. So I'm going to kind of get started on this. I'm super excited for our first meeting this semester. So thank you everybody so much for joining us. This is the CSUN RTDNA, and I am the president of the RTDNA for fall 2020 and spring 2021. And I kind of wanted to introduce our board members. So Eduardo, do you kind of want to start with your title?
Yeah, sure, Sophia. Thank you for that. So hey everyone, as Sophia has introduced herself, she's the president of RTDNA. Me personally, I am the vice president of RTDNA. Just like a short overview of how long I've been a part of RTDNA. I've been here ever since 2018, fall 2018. I was just a member. Then the next year after that, I was the secretary, and then now this year I am the vice president. So do any one of you other board members want to go next?
Yeah, maybe Savannah. I'm not sure if you could hear us. She's rushing her dogs to the vet right now, so she might be.
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you guys.
Perfect.
Yeah, my dad just ripped open his stitches in his hands, so I'm not going to be super present for a minute, but I will be back in a little bit.
No worries.
Do what you gotta do.
Yeah, she's a marketing director this semester, so she's been doing an awesome job. Lily, do you kind of want to talk about what your position does?
Yeah, so I'm Lily Ramirez, and I am the social media coordinator. So anything on social media will basically be me or Savannah. She's a marketing director. I used to be a member of RTDNA a year and a half ago, and now I'm a board member. So yeah.
That's great, and we're really happy to have you. Bea, do you kind of want to talk about what you've been doing?
Sure. I'm Bea. I'm the secretary of RTDNA, and here I just like manage things. I take notes and I send you guys email. Also, Sammy does it, and I've been a member since last semester because Esteban, our guest speaker, he told me about the club. And now I'm a board member also, so it's been really awesome.
That's great, and we're really happy to have you on our board too. Sammy, do you kind of want to like talk about your position as well?
Hi guys, I am Sammy. I am the communications chair, and I'm gonna be writing blogs. So if you guys go to our website, there is a tab called blogs, and it's gonna be fun. So I'm gonna give you guys some tips on how to succeed in college and summarize our meetings here. And yeah, we're excited.
Thank you so much, Sammy. And Andre, last but not least.
Hi everybody, my name is Andre. I am the treasurer for RTDNA. This is my third semester at the club. This is my first semester as a board member. And I'm just in charge of the finances, the fundraising, things like that. So I'm looking awesome. It's an awesome opportunity to be here, and I look forward to speaking with all of you and meeting everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andre. Well, we have a special guest here today because he's kind of near and dear to our hearts because once a Matador, always a Matador. Esteban Reynoso is a MMJ right now, which is a multimedia journalist at Action News Now in Chico/Redding in Northern California. And he was the former CSUN RTDNA president. And he's the one who actually appointed me as the marketing director and as the new president. So Esteban, we are so excited to have you. I am so excited to see you here today.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for joining us. Do you kind of want to like talk about yourself and like what you've been doing?
Yeah, sure. So as Sophia said, I mean, I was the president of RTDNA last semester, last year? Yeah, the whole year. Last semester is kind of in oblivion right now because of everything that's going on.
It really feels like it was like 3 years ago.
It does. It really does. Like what a decade this year has been, right? But yeah, and right after I graduated from CSUN, I got this opportunity in Chico, California, Redding, California. It's two separate. We have a bureau up in Redding, and it's with Action News Now. It's a CBS and NBC affiliate. And I am a multimedia journalist. I'm an MMJ, and every day I go out there and find the story, enterprise. You know, I cut up packages, VSVs. I can go live in up to 5 shows a day. It gets pretty busy. But that's where I'm at right now. And before that, again, I was at CSUN. I was at KCSN as an editorial assistant. And then before that, I was a CBS News intern, which really is where I feel like my career took off. And I got the internship through CSUN. So my heart is always staying with CSUN. I mean, I have this endless love for it. It really put me on the path that I am now. And, you know, I was one of 50 interns out of 4,500 applications, I think, nationwide. It was something crazy like that. And they paid for everything to go to New York. And it was the most amazing experience ever. I still say that even now. And that's what really geared me towards giving back to everybody, bringing not just you, but your whole school, your department, everybody up to that next level. And that's why I wanted to become the RTDNA president. And that's why when you guys reached out to me, I jumped at the opportunity, because whatever questions you guys have about this industry, about working as an MMJ, about in news in general, or just life in general, like, I want to help you guys out as much as possible. Because you guys took the initiative to get into this meeting, and not everybody woke up today and was like, hey, I gotta do this. You know, so you guys already taking the time to just be here, you're already ahead of the game.
Yeah, he's so right, because Esteban, when he was in my position, or when he was in our positions, like all of us, he did have people that helped him out too. And we did have really great guest speakers in the RTDNA. So I think when you're in his position, that somebody did help you out, you kind of want to do that in return to anybody else that does need help. So Esteban actually is here today to kind of talk about journalism ethics and why the preservation of journalism ethics and the free speech rights is really important. So I'm going to ask him a couple questions in this meeting about journalism ethics and why we should maintain that. So just going to get started. Esteban, what is journalism ethics?
Journalism ethics, I mean, you deal with it every day. I mean, especially now, obviously, with everything that's going on politically, you know, you hear fake news, you hear fake media. Ethics is so very important right now. And I mean, you should always keep that in the back of your head when you're interviewing somebody that wants to remain anonymous, or when you're interviewing somebody who just lost their son or just lost their home or something like that. You always want to keep that in the back of your head, like, okay, but I mean in the back of your head, because you're a human first. You're obviously a human first. You got to kind of show that emotion to them and just kind of say, I'm so sorry, but if you have the time, take it. But again, I mean, going kind of back towards the ethics part, I mean, truth is just, it's so necessary right now. Checking sources, fact checking, and looking at both sides, because being unbiased is huge. And I don't want to go off into a tangent, so Sophia, can you ask me the next question?
Yeah, but you're so right, because it's really important. That's what's different about journalism compared to anything else. And that's what really stands out. So why should we maintain the journalism ethics? Like, what's the point in doing that?
Well, there's a lot to it. Just on the surface, what I can think of from some of my own personal run-ins, even, I mean, I've only been on the job maybe a little over 3 months now, but I've already had my run-ins of like, you said this on air that you can't technically say, or that it wasn't necessarily true. It was just word. It was just kind of mouth, like word of mouth, you know, and you got to kind of check that at the door. You know, you don't want to be an advocate for one side. You always want to remain neutral. You always want to show both sides of whatever it is. I mean, one example I can think of is that in Chico, there was a big needle distribution program before I even got there. So I didn't even know about this, but they were giving, they were handing out I forget what it was filled with, but it was pretty much these needles that were being distributed to the homeless population in Chico to hopefully get them off whatever they were doing, or to just, you know, some way to kind of help everybody. That's what it was seen as at first by the city council. And now, yeah, I mean, you know, it got really tough and a lot of stuff went all over the place. And now they ended it. They finally ended it. And a lot of people were like happy with it. A lot of people were on the other side of it. And you always have to look at both sides of everything, not just needle distribution, not just like, you know, a politician, but I mean, everything. You know, and that's so key, because that means that you're actually reporting. You're being a reporter. You're reporting the truth, and that's what's number one, most important.
Yeah, I totally agree. So next question, what is so important and why do we have to stay unbiased?
Well, yeah, kind of like I said, I mean, you know, just remaining unbiased is huge. I mean, especially now, you can't have one side you can't have one side of any argument just kind of stay on you. Like, you want to be able to have both sides of everything. It's a necessity. And I mean, when you get down to the kind of the bottom line of it all, it's your reputation. If you kind of alter it, if you're not, you know, if you don't get both sides, if you don't remain biased, right? It's your reputation. It's the station's reputation. It's your coworker's reputation. It's the affiliate's reputation. And at the end of the day, it's the news's reputation. Because, I mean, there are so many people that are in that gray area of, you know, do I trust the news? Do I trust what I click on? Do I, you know, what's true and what's not? And whatever they see could be that one altering, you know, that one grain of rice that tips the scale to the other side. And so that's why it's always necessary to remain unbiased all the time.
That's true. And unfortunately, we do see sometimes that there is biases in journalism, but us getting that from the start, and Esteban still maintaining that from his start in the his first career as a journalist, that's amazing. And that's really great that CSUN was able to kind of like grasp that and really like put that in your head too, to maintain unbiased. So question for you actually. So what is the main focus of a journalist?
Main focus of a journalist has to be telling the truth. I mean, getting down the facts, being knowledgeable, and being straightforward as possible. You know, like Walter Cronkite would say, just the facts. You know, that's what a journalist does. I mean, tell the story, but tell it with factual information. I mean, get everything confirmed no matter what it is, whether it's the number of houses destroyed in a fire or the number of money stolen from a bank or whatever the case may be. You know, always have the right information, because things like that matter to not just you, but to everybody. Everybody wants to know, and your job, it's a public service to inform the public. So always have the right factual information and stick with the truth.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. So as an MMJ, does your news oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Notifications. That was very loud. But as an MMJ, does your news director or producer make sure that you are following the code of ethics?
Yes. We always check up on each other all the time. And even yesterday, I think I can tell you guys this, I'm not too sure. But yesterday, I mean, I'm covering the North Complex fire, which, if you guys didn't know, is pretty much the Bear Fire and the Claremont Fire, and they combined into this big, huge 250,000 acres of burnt earth, right? And it just swept through a couple towns up there. And I mean, it's like a 2-hour drive from my station in Chico, and I was still sent up there to go do it. And so I went up there, and you see just everything destroyed. I mean, there are cars, there are houses, there are people's tractors, you can see their kitchen table because everything around it is just burnt to the ground, and you can see it from the sidewalk. I mean, you know, these are where people grew up and lived, and, you know, everything. So took out my camera, and that's what I was sent out there to do. I was out there to film the devastation, to film the destruction, to get behind the lines and show the people what they haven't seen. I mean, everybody sees the smoke, but you don't see a burnt pile of ash, right? Or a burned down house. So that's what I went out there to do. And I was on the sidewalk, and I was filming this house, and I was zooming in on some stuff. And you know, you kind of question it a little bit, like, this is somebody's house. This was somebody's house. This was where they lived. Is it okay to show it? So I called my boss, and I was like, hey, I'm not sure how I feel about this. You know, if it's in your gut, like, just, you know, never be afraid to ask. Never be afraid to ask. And I just called, and I said, hey, I've got this great video of, you know, I say great like it's a good thing, but it's not. I mean, this person's house was burnt down, but you have this great video of just the destruction, flames still inside the house. Can I use it? You know, I mean, and that's where you kind of have to push aside like how good of a video it is and kind of look at it as what it is. It's somebody's house. So eventually we ended up deciding that it was legal to use the video, first off, which is like, you know, that's another section in itself. Like, it was legal to use the video because I didn't trespass. I was on the sidewalk. You can see everything, but it's the ethics portion. And yeah, that's kind of like a spectrum. It's not necessarily like this is legal, this is illegal. It's like, you know, you kind of have to gauge where you are. And so we ended up zooming in more on just generic stuff. We didn't show any numbers, no street signs, just close-ups of the flames, close-ups of like the kitchen table. You can't see anything in the background. And that's kind of, that was like my, one of the most recent run-ins with just ethics, just simply through video form. I mean, you always have to think about that. You always do.
Yeah, and that's a great example, because sometimes I feel like your ethics and your personal morals can kind of like cross paths. And you might feel like indifferent about covering a story based on the situation. So it's interesting, and thank you for sharing that example, because that's a really great example to give.
Yeah.
So
we have a question here in the box.
I was just going to say, yeah, Brian has a good question.
Yeah,
you
we
think
have a question here.
News, even legacy media, I'm thinking that you're thinking like local news, right? Like CBS, NBC, like you're thinking network, right? That ratings get in the way of reporting factual information, since there's always a race to get out news, especially breaking news. That is a great question, because people have made tons of mistakes, even the biggest ones. And even like in LA, in New York, everybody's made huge mistakes. And the biggest one that I can think of, example wise, that was fairly recent, is Kobe Bryant's death. And I don't remember if you guys like were looking at the tweets or whatever, but they were saying like, oh yeah, just Kobe died. Oh no, it was Kobe and all of his daughters, and it's just Vanessa by herself. And then it was like, no, the whole family's gone. You know, and this was verified, Fox 11, ABC 7, tweeting out that everybody was gone, which wasn't true. So yes, it does get very nitpicky when it gets to that. Like how long do you wait to make sure that it's factual before you send out that push alert, or before you say it on TV, you know? And I don't think that ratings kind of get in the way of it. I think it's just that being the first one, you know, because nowadays news is so social media driven that it's like whoever gets that link out first is the one that's going to get the most clicks, because by the time they're clicking your link and you're sending one out, you're already too late. That's a million eyes that you just lost, right? So I think it doesn't necessarily get in the way of ratings, but because of the way that journalism is evolving into right now, that it does get a little dicey. And I mean, because if they send out the tweet, that's supposed to be verified, and you can send it out like that. But with the news, when you turn on that TV, you have to wait till what, 4 o'clock or every half hour when there's an update or whatever. I mean, unless they do like a breaking news coverage and then, you know, you take that, but that means you have to be sitting in your couch But when it's a tweet, you have it right there in your face. So yeah, it gets a little crazy out there, but you know, I still think that it's always most important to just stick with the facts. And I think I don't want to be biased here, but it's just the truth. CBS LA, which I worked for them at the time when Kobe Bryant died, they waited until they could confirm who was on there, and then they pushed everything out. So I think there were like only one or two that did it properly. Kind of everybody else rushed to it. But I don't know if it's a ratings thing. I think it may be more of a social media thing. I hope that answers the question. I know I went off on a tangent, but there's a lot to it. Great question.
Yeah, that was a great question. Thank you so much, Brian, for asking that. And then you guys can interrupt me at any time too, to ask your questions in the chat, or even unmute yourself to ask a question. So don't be afraid to ask a question. But what is one thing that when you're covering a story that you make sure that you do every single time?
Make your deadline. Make the deadline. So this is one of the pieces of information that I missed slot. Okay. It happens to everybody, right? There are some people that are golden perfect and they have never missed slot before in their life. I missed slot a month in, and it's because it was just difficult. I had bad signal. I mean, you're not in the office. You're shooting everything by yourself, editing by yourself, getting the interviews by yourself, transferring it by yourself. Like, it gets tough. You know, you're your audio engineer. You're your own photog. Like, you're doing everything, right? So it gets tough. And I missed slot, and they just ended up saying, okay, we can push you to 4:30, but if you can't get it in, you're dead. Like, they kill you, right? So you're out the show. And then that's when like the boss gets notified, and then you get talking to, right? So it's happened to me. And that I called one of my mentors and I said, hey, I'm freaking out here. Like, am I in the right career? Like, am I doing this okay? You know, you start to second guess yourself. Things become unclear. It gets tough when you can't do the job that you got this degree for, that you put everything into, right? And he said, we make TV, not art. And that was one of the best pieces of advice I've got. And it's because it's true. I mean, yes, at the end of the day, you want to make that lighting perfect. You want to put everything in focus. You want to use blurs and effects and whatever. But at the end of the day, we make TV, not art. So just get it in. And he told me you should already be like done an hour before it's due. Like, you know, yes, you're by yourself, but the more you get into it, the more used to it you get. And then you can make your deadline easily. And then within that 1 hour, that's where you're like looking for gnats. That's where you're looking for sound and that you can fade in and fade back out. Or where you're writing something cool and you see like a cool sentence, you know, or whatever the case may be. You can kind of touch it up a little bit later. But the number one most important thing that I got was just turn it in, make the deadline, because then you mess everybody up. And that's not cool. So.
Oh my gosh, that's so scary. I would probably have a heart attack.
Scary.
So we did get another question from Luis in here.
Cool.
Do you think your professors should focus on teaching students to work in that kind of environment, creating packages in a day?
I was always one to advocate for that. I did that myself when I was at CSUN. I mean, on Monday, I think I would go and do something. I would contact the CSUN. Oh, it was right around when coronavirus started. And I think, yeah, I don't know if you guys remember, but it was when some of the students went to the Republican conference, was it? In like Virginia or something? And then they came back and it was like 11 of them might have had it. I still don't even know what happened. To this day, I still have no clue what happened. But I remember that was my story. And I went to go talk to the health department and I went to go talk to students and I got everything and I did everything. And yes, I made a package in a day and it was tough, but it did prepare me for where I am now. If it wasn't for that day, that week or whatever, I probably would have been not here talking to you guys. Like it would be a totally different story. Cause yeah, it is difficult. And I think professors should kind of, but it's tough because you always hear the same thing where but those journalists, they don't have, their parents on their back, or they don't have a car restriction, or they don't have to, they don't have 6 other classes or 5 other classes or whatever. So they do it in their own way for that reason. But I think it would be interesting to at least do like the last week or something before everybody graduates. Just say, hey, if you can do a package in a day, do it. And I mean, it's only a minute 15, minute 30, right? Nothing too crazy. So it's possible. It seems tough, but I would have never, ever thought that like 3 months later, I could do a package and 2 VOSATs in a day and like 3 live shots. But you do it. You do it. You get used to it.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to my next question, actually.
Yeah.
But day turns are actually they're more difficult than you actually think. And I have done quite a few of them myself, but it's stressful. It is very stressful, but I felt that I was more prepared than me waiting like a full week to just edit some parts and then put the VOSAT in and then do your sign off. And it was just, I felt like that was not preparing me. I was just being lazy. So, so having that like day turn is like, it's exciting, but it's also stressful.
Yeah. It is. It is, but it is so very rewarding. I mean, that's like, at the end of the day, that's what you do it for, to get that like one email that's sent to you and saying, thank you so much for covering the story about my daughter. Thank you so much for covering the story about, about my struggling business, and it's so rewarding just in itself. But to get those emails and those phone calls, like it makes it all worth it. It really does. It really does.
Yeah, it does. So for you personally, why do you think it's important for journalists to have free speech?
I feel like, can I go ahead and answer Lily's question beforehand?
Yeah, of course. I didn't see one.
I'm sorry. I felt like that one kind of goes down another road. So can I answer this one?
Yes, of course.
So how many packages are you assigned in the daily basis? So or on a daily basis, whatever. On a daily basis, I'm assigned pretty much a package a day, but it's at least 1 package a day. So it could be, I could have 3 different stories, and one of them would be a package, and the other 2 would be like a VOSAT vote or a live VOSAT vote, or so that means that right now I'm on night side, so it's a little bit easier. But when I come in, I could be live at 4, 5, and 6, and I would need to do an interview, get some VO, and be ready in an hour, and like have my suit, have a jacket, have a tie, hair done, like all that stuff, right? And I would have pretty much an hour to like do it all, and that would pretty much go live at 4, 5, and 6. Then after that, I would have my package to do. So that's where I would like go get more video, go get more interviews. And then I would either, if I'm close, I'd come back to the station and hammer it all out and then go back out and go live. Or I would just stay where I am in case anything changes and then export it to the station like through the internet, which is like, I hate doing it that way because that's how I miss my slot, because signal was just so terrible. So yeah, it's actually a lot more than a package. And I've heard of like some cities like Salt Lake City, some markets where it's 1 package a day and you have a photog and the interview is already set up for you. And it's nice, but right now you got to get through the tough times to get to the good ones, So yeah, it's a lot.
Luis did have a question as well. He asked, do you go out and look for your own stories, or do they assign it to you?
It's a lot of both. So yes, sometimes, and the third one is sometimes the story comes to you. So I always think about that too, because I do go out and I look, like enterprise, that's called when you enterprise stories. You go out and you see like the biggest pizza joint in town was shut down and no one knew about it. Nobody. And it was shut down because of coronavirus. And they said like 3 of their employees tested positive 2 days ago, and we didn't get anything. Nobody knew anything. And so I took a photo and I sent it into the station, and I was like, guys, do we know about this? And they were like, no, that's your story tonight. And so all of a sudden, you know, that was my story. So sometimes it's like, and even Facebook is a huge help. I hate it, but I love it because it gives me stories. And then you just kind of try to bring, because it's a local news network, you try to bring national topics to this very small 100,000 people community. I say small, but you know, we're used to LA, which is like 4 million. This is like 100,000, right? So yeah, and that's where I would try to bring like I think it was a gun issue or something. And obviously, or not obviously, but there are a lot of gun owners in Chico. So that was kind of the angle, you know, it was like, how do you feel about having your gun taken away or not having it taken away or whatever? And then other times I'll come into the station and they're like, hey, you have an interview at 3 o'clock. And that's your story tonight. Whatever you get from it is what you're going to do. And then if there's any breaking news after that, I cover that as well. So breaking news is a whole other monster, but yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy hearing that, because it's like, there's so many different ways, excuse me, so many different ways that you can find a story.
Yeah. Savannah has a really good tip too. I didn't even know about this. This is really cool. I usually actually used GoFundMe to find local story ideas. That's really cool. Normally we find the story and then the GoFundMe. So it's really cool that you're doing it the other way around. So kudos to you on that. That's awesome.
Bea did have a question as well. And Savannah, that is such a great idea too. But Bea did have a question, and she said, has it been easy to find your interviews when you go out on your own?
It was tough the first like 2 months because nobody knew who I was. So I would go up and say, hey, I'm with Action News Now in Chico. Can you guys talk to me a little bit about, you know, what you guys saw here or whatever? And they're like, oh, we don't know you. I don't know who you are. I've never seen you before. And they just walk away. And it's like, okay, sorry. So you just walk away. I mean, there's nothing else to do, right? So it's a little difficult beforehand, but something that Professor Davis always told us was to carry your press pass all the time. And I did, and ever since this one day where I was rejected by this lady because she thought I was like completely fake, and she was like, "Where's your press pass? Like, I need to see your press pass. I don't believe you. Like, you're just some guy in slacks. Like, I don't know who you are." And I was like, "Oh no, I promise you. Like, I'm a journalist and this and that." And she was like, "No, I don't believe you. You can get away from my car." And I was like, "Okay." So ever since that, I was like, I'm holding onto my press pass all the time. And so it actually came in handy, and I've gotten interviews because people are like, "Where's your press pass?" I'm like, "Oh, I got it right here." I'm like, you know, I'm a journalist. Do you mind if I take 5 minutes and just interview you guys? And they're like, "Oh yeah, actually, yeah. Action News. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I love watching you guys." So it's, you know, it's a lot of both. It's a lot of both. You get all the characters in the world, but yeah. It's been tough, but it's also been fun. Yeah.
That's awesome, actually.
Yeah.
I think Sammy just said something. Okay, so with hybrid classes, graduating in journalism will be a completely different experience. Being in the newsroom, how do you think editors/employers are looking at future journalists who finish their undergrad in an online environment in terms of job opportunities? That's a great question, actually, Sammy.
Yeah, really great question. So I think even before the pandemic, what news directors look for is creativity. They look for confidence on camera. Most of them don't even go past your 30 seconds, like the first 30 seconds. I've gotten calls from news directors where they're like, "Hey, saw your stuff, you know, loved it. We want to talk about giving you a job," right? And I would say, "Oh, well, what about the rest of it? Do you have any tips for me?" And they're like, "To be honest with you, I only played 25 seconds in and I liked what I saw, so I gave you a call." So it can be either way. Either they see the whole thing or just the beginning. And I think what they look for the most now is probably creativity, because every single interview package in the world right now is Zoom. It's all Zoom. So what are you going to do to make it yours, or to make it new, or to make it fresh, whether it be you know, like, and I'm not talking about just like little effects or little dissolves and stuff like that. Like that's all cool and all, but maybe like put the camera over here and, you know, shoot yourself interviewing them, or, you know, ask them to hold up something on their on their end and, you know, zoom into it and then download the photo and like dissolve into the actual photo, something like that. Like just get crazy with it. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see what these reels out of the pandemic become, because I think we're still so deep in it right now that we don't know the end result. But I think it's going to be creativity, because now it's like a level playing field. You know, everybody's on Zoom, everybody's doing coronavirus stuff. So how are you going to be different?
That's so true. And Sammy's clapping. But quick question, actually. So
Yeah.
Since being a student at CSUN and reporting at CSUN, how has it been kind of different being your first job as a reporter? And how has your reporting from being a student to an actual like MMJ changed?
Mm-hmm. Can you say that last part again? How has what changed?
Your reporting style as a student versus your reporting style as an MMJ.
Yeah. Well, when I was a student, I still kind of look back, and it's crazy to see just how fast you can change. Like, I think one of the biggest things that they kept telling me was energy, 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 energy. Like, always bring it up, always bring your A game. Like, these are people that, like I'm going to use this fire as a big example because it was a huge thing for me. It was like a rite of passage, really. And so covering this North Complex fire, they were telling me, like, you have to, it was these people's houses and lives are at stake. Are you just going to go on and say, as you can see behind me, the fire is still burning, there's a lot going on right now? No, like, you need that energy. You need people to, you know, you need to add that sense of urgency into this report. And that's something that I didn't have in college. And that when I got out here, I learned about like people, there are lives depending on what you do. There's critical public information that is waiting to like come out of your mouth onto TV so that people know where to go, what to do if they're affected, if their loved ones are affected, whatever, right? So I think that was probably one of the biggest things in my reporting style. And also getting used to live shots, because at CSUN, we never really did a lot of live shots. I think I did maybe one and then a bunch of anchor stuff, right? But if you guys have done Valley View News or Matador News, you know that they kind of edit some stuff afterwards, right? So it's, you know, it's different. But the live shots were a lot of fun, and you got to get used to those, bringing the energy. And I think going back to just my main piece of advice, which was like, we make TV, not art, and getting stuff in, because you have a week to do a package, 2 weeks sometimes. And like, that's cool and all. But if I had 2 weeks on a package, that thing would be amazing. I'd get every award in the world. No, I'm just totally kidding. But no, that was a big transition for sure, to go from 1 to 2 weeks to 1 day or even 4 hours. You know, so that's crazy. And that was probably the biggest change from reporting, because it's all necessarily the same foundation. You know, like you write a VO, you write a SOT, you write a VO, you get an interview, you get B-roll, you know, all that stuff. But not to hit CSUN, but I wish I did more live shots and just getting the energy up.
And adding to that topic, Lily had a question. So how can you prepare yourself to do a live shot?
Sometimes I don't have time to prepare myself. Sometimes I have 3 minutes and I just booted up my camera. But there are other times where, yeah, I'm on time and I have 15 minutes to prepare for a live shot. So the first thing that I do is, even when I'm writing my script, is how I'm gonna be active in my stand-up, because you never want to be just kind of like standing there like, I'm Esteban Reynoso, Valley View News. You know, like, you want to be active. You want to say, behind me, this cabinet was completely destroyed in the fire. No longer is there anything in there, like whatever, right? So you always want to kind of show something, be active. Again, it's just going back to being different, because people can read off a teleprompter easily, right? But it takes a different craft to show what's really going on, you know, like doing straight lives, kind of switching angles in the middle between shots or something, you know, like little stuff like that. And that's kind of what goes through my mind when I write my scripts, but also when I'm setting up my camera, because sometimes it'll be a last minute decision where I'm like, I want to show this burnt up chimney behind me, or I want to show the crash right over my shoulder, so that way I can point at it or whatever's going on. So it's a mixed bag, but for the times that I don't have time to prepare, having my phone is huge because that's the only script you've got. So that one's hard, you know.
We have a couple questions for you.
Yeah, Brian makes a good point. Yeah, like the CNN reporters, you know, behind them. Yeah, you describe what you're seeing, what you're smelling. That's something that I'm trying to get better at. You know, what you're smelling, what you're seeing off in the distance, and then if you see something over there, then pan the camera. You know, you're their eyes, you're the audience's eyes, you're the world's eyes. You know, be on the lookout for that stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then Savannah also had a question as well. Do you have any specific journalists that you admire?
There's a lot. One of the ones that I look at, which is who Sophia and I are very fond of him, Jonathan Gonzalez, CSUN alum. You know, he went to COC. Now he's just weekends right now, right? As an anchor.
Yeah, he's weekend morning anchoring NBC LA, and then an MMJ during the weekdays.
Yep, he's huge. He's got his I always struggle with nap pops and writing, you know, because voicing is fun. The interviews, people always say some nice sound bites, but you know, it's those little things, little transitions. So I find myself thinking about Jonathan's package on I think he has this boy who makes hot chocolate, and you know, he mic'd up, and he mic'd up the little kid.
The zipper.
Yeah, he got the zipper nat sound. He got the kid shivering. He got like taking that first sip of the hot cocoa. You know, he got all of these little minute details that you know, make it such a great story. So yeah. I really admire his. DeMarco Morgan from CBS LA. He's a huge, that's like my big brother. He's so awesome. He's so awesome. And I mean, he's a great journalist. He's a great reporter, great anchor, but he's also a great person in general. And I think he's for me, that's kind of that balance, you know, nobody likes, you know, I'm trying not to cuss here or something, but you know, nobody likes mean people. So, you know, be nice, just be kind. There's no other reason to be anything but, right?
Yeah, and I think that's why we also really like Jonathan Gonzalez, because he is such a nice person and he's so humble. Yeah.
And Boyd Huppert, you know, to be honest with you, I don't think I've heard of him. I gotta look at his stuff. Steve Hartman.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. Steve Hartman is another one. I when I get stories that like feature stories, even though they're very rare, you want to make those look good. I look at Steve Hartman's stuff because his writing, the camera work, just everything is just goosebumps. He's good.
So do you have your own equipment, or does your job provide it for you?
The job provides it for me, but I find myself using my cell phone all the time, because sometimes it's intimidating when you go towards people with a camera and a microphone and a tripod stand and a lighting kit. You know, it gets intimidating. People don't want to be on camera, or, you know, sometimes you don't have time to set that all up, and this helicopter is about to do its first airdrop, or you know, the fire crews just arrived and they're about to block off the area and of this car crash or something, you know. So and sometimes the iPhone cameras are better than the actual camera itself. It's, you know, so there's all types of reasons, but so I use the station's equipment, but I do find myself using my iPhone sometimes too, because it's a pretty big tool.
I've noticed that recently with a lot of stations, they've actually been making a lot of their packages or doing some live shots actually from their phones instead of from the cameras. Do you guys also do that as well?
Yes, we do. We do. One of our reporters, so funny you brought it up. Yesterday, one of our reporters did a cell phone stand-up at the Bear Fire, and it was part of their package. I mean, normally you use that for social media or Facebook Live or whatever, but they used it as their stand-up, and it worked out beautifully. I think it was awesome. And I think it goes back to that other point of just being creative, being different, you know, talking to your news director and saying, hey, I want to do this. I have this idea. Can I execute it? And if they're like, go for it, you know, then do it. Why not?
Yeah, I think that's a great point to it, especially since digital media is really just growing right now. And I think that newsrooms are really, they try to keep as up to date as possible. So using the cell phones, and if all the millennials and the Gen Zs are using their cell phones now, might as well kind of hop on that trend.
Yeah. Yeah.
We did have another question. For people who are applying for internships in the future, what made you stand out and how did you prepare?
So the way it was, the New York one, the CBS New York internship, that was the only internship I got. I applied to, I think it was probably like 22 to 23 internships that summer, a lot of them. And I got 4 responses. I got 2 no's, a maybe, and a yes. And the CBS was the yes. So I went with it. So that was a big one. But so that's like number 1, apply everywhere. Then even if it's a different, like the same station, different department, just do it. Then how did I stand out? What I did in the interview process was, and it was a news internship, but I was a big sports guy at the time. And what I said was, they said, so what's going on in the world right now? And I said, well, the Lakers are in the playoffs. Soccer just ended. The Super Bowl was 2 months ago. Like I didn't know anything about news. And they said, oh, well, that's great. But what about what was going on in the world? And I was dumbfounded. I didn't really know what was happening. So they started asking me questions like, where was Donald Trump meeting Kim Jong-un? Where was their meeting going to take place? And the only reason I knew it was because the day before I had Valley View News. And I said, oh, it was Vietnam. And then they asked me some other questions about like the protests that were happening in Venezuela at the time. You know, that was kind of what was going on. And I found out later on that I think maybe 10% of the people that were interviewed knew those answers. So that's kind of how I stood out too. Knowing, even though I was a big sports guy, I knew what was happening in news. So knowing what's happening in the world, huge. Because they can ask you at any moment. And if you don't know, you look dumb. Like it's not a good look for you. And how did you prepare? Do you mean how did I prepare like for the internship or for the interview or something like that? Can you kind of clarify that a little bit? For the interview. So yeah, I think that goes back to what I kind of said. You know, I didn't really prepare too much for it other than knowing some CBS people, knowing who worked there, who was the president of CBS. And if anybody knows that would be awesome. Who's the president of CBS News? You know, knowing the company that you're applying for, knowing the people that work there, that was how I kind of prepared for it. And even then I was taken back, and it was kind of a stroke of luck that I was able to know that stuff. So knowing what's going on in the world, the company, and who works for that company. I think that was probably what I prepared myself the most on for the interview.
Yeah, and if you're really, just for me to kind of like touch on that, if you're really, really wanting to work for this company, it doesn't matter if it's a big company, it doesn't matter if it's a small company, they are going to ask you things that are going on with the company. And if you don't know those answers, they're probably not going to assume that you really want to work for that company. Because people who really, really, really love that company, It could be ABC7 or CBS or NBC. It could be any type of company that you would like to work for. They're all different in their own ways. They're not just all the same. So when you're going for an interview, and if you do get an interview at one of these companies, please, please, please do your research, because it is very, very, very important to them that they know that they're hiring somebody who is willing to put in the extra effort to know about the company that they want to work for.
Very true.
So
got a couple more questions here.
Yeah.
Bill Melligan, am I saying that right? Melligan? Bill Melligan? I gotta look him up. I'm gonna look him up, and Boyd too. So practicing with an iPhone is also great for students that don't have access to equipment. That's very true. I mean, I remember like the previous semester, I was trying to do a package and all the cameras were gone. So iPhone comes in handy. I do want to say, try to invest in like, I think it was like $40. It cost me $40 to get like an iPhone tripod and some lavalier mics that connected to the aux of the phone. And that's what I did for my last semester, and I got 7 packages done or something like that. So that was a huge help. If you've got the money, try to invest into it. You know, that helped me out a lot. So Luis said, what was the hardest thing about moving to a new city and a new job? Just like in general, like personal life stuff. I don't know. I mean, I think the work was extremely hard on its own. And that's what made me miss like being home, you know, where you can come home and just, you don't got to worry about cooking. You don't got to worry about cleaning, right? Like, you know, just not the whole house, right? Just kind of your own room, you know, and you got the dogs there. Like you got everything going for you. Everything's cool. You don't got to worry about rent. You don't got to worry about paying your Wi-Fi bill, right? So I think those are probably the toughest things about moving to a new city by yourself with a new job. You come home and you're by yourself and there's nobody and it's midnight and everything's closed because of coronavirus. So what do? You know, how do you keep yourself mentally stable? And that's I think probably one of the most difficult things, because the physical is just as much of a necessity as the mental. You know, you got to be there in both ways. So, you know, always try to eat and find some way to unwind, whether that be like playing video games or eating junk food or whatever, you know, or running or playing sports or whatever it is. Try to find your me time. And that was super difficult for me the first 2 months. I even still struggle with it sometimes.
Bea did ask a question. Do you think foreign journalists like her in the future have a chance in the US? And do you think that we have even more effort to stand out than other American journalists?
I really like that second question. The first question, I feel like, of course, I think foreign journalists have a future in the US, have a chance in the US, and both ways. I mean, there are, I can think of a couple reporters that, you know, their beat is the Middle East, you know, but they're from Connecticut, you know, or their beat is like India or, you know, other elsewhere foreign places. So I don't see why we can't integrate here, you know, bring journalists from elsewhere here. And I think we don't have enough of that yet. And I think that's something that news hasn't quite figured out yet. So maybe we could be a little ahead of the game there. Because I think it'd be cool to, you know, like I know the president of Brazil is very, very controversial. So, you know, imagine bringing a journalist from Brazil that speaks English, that knows what they're doing, that did this whole investigation, and bring it up to you know, to a bigger light, to the United States. And yeah, I think definitely everybody has a future anywhere, because journalism is everywhere. So, and do you think we have to make even more of an effort? I think that's just everybody, not just, you know, other countries. I think just everybody, because I think it doesn't matter like where you come from. It's what you do to stand out, what you do to be different. You know, I've said that before, but, you know, I think it's so true. You know, how are you going to make this bridge better than anything anybody's ever seen, right? So I hope that kind of answers it a little bit.
Talking about sports, have you ever covered a match recently or plan to cover any sports in the game?
So sports was my first love. It was like one of the reasons I got into journalism in the first place. And I haven't really covered too many sports stuff. The most sports that I did was probably Kobe's death. However, when I was negotiating my contract with my current employer, I put into my contract that I would sign if I can do like Friday night lights sports reporting, because I couldn't let go of that sports. So obviously because of coronavirus, like there are no sports right now. So everybody's just straight news. But Friday nights, I technically belong to the sports department as their sports reporter. So yes, I do plan to cover a lot of games in the future.
That's awesome. So how have you kept yourself mentally sane?
Honestly, friends, making friends up there, talking with your family constantly, like try to call your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, just hit them up and just, just tell them what's going on in your day, because you miss them, they miss you. That's where I kind of, that it gives you that little piece of home. Like my sister will tell me how my brother is like annoying her or something, or like how the dogs got out or something. And that you can see it in your mind, and that keeps you mentally home, as like corny as it sounds. Other than that, my friends out there, they're super, super helpful. I mean, we go out to lakes, we go out to hikes, we go out to, do whatever, COVID safe, but it's fun. It's fun. And that's how you keep mentally sane, because you work so much, you have all these deadlines, there's always this pressure. It's nice to let the pressure off over the weekends.
Yeah, and I think that's really great. And this is a really great question that Savannah just asked. Do you know of any mental health assistance offered to journalists? I know that you mentioned that is very important to you.
Yeah. Off the top of my head, I don't. I wish I did. I feel like that's something I should have a card for, of like, if you're in trouble or something. Yeah, because it's tough. Like recently, and even in our newsroom, we've had people that have lost loved ones in the past like 2 weeks. We had somebody that like they hit a deer with their car. Okay. And it was very emotional to them because of what they saw, because of what happened. And so I think that's why if you can't get a mental like health assistant right away, your boss kind of becomes that. And I think that's why I have so much respect for my boss, because whatever the problem is, you go to him. It's like a fatherly figure more than a boss, right? Like it's that mutual, you can come to me, I can come to you. I got your back, you got mine. And yeah, that's a tough one for me to answer. I wish I had more information on that, but I feel like it has to be out there somewhere. It has to be out there.
I'm sure. What's kind of like some advice that you would give to starting journalists?
You mean starting out like their careers, or right now in college? You mean their careers, right? Starting out your careers, like a big piece of advice. I'm trying to think. I mean, I covered, going away from home. I would say make connections. I think I got so lucky that it's a kind of a small town, so a lot of people are very connected. And I got kind of lucky with that, because it's like, oh yeah, I would ask somebody in the newsroom and they'd say, oh yeah, my mom's uncle or whatever was a firefighter. I can get you his number and we can, you can interview him or something. And so just like that, I've saved an hour of my day, you know. So getting to know people, being nice, just handing out business cards as much as you can, just letting your own personality shine, you know, just kind of, you represent a lot more than just yourself when you're starting out. And that's something that I didn't really notice too much, that you represent a lot more than just your station. You know, you represent journalism as a whole, like I said earlier, and that's something that I would say, you know, so just be nice, be human first, journalist second, and that's how you become a better journalist.
Sorry.
You're okay. You're okay. Oh yeah, was that kind of it? I'm writing down these people that you guys are telling me because I'm not too familiar with a lot of these. Maybe I need to do more homework.
I actually had a question too. How has journalism kind of like changed your life? Did you always want to be a reporter or a journalist?
No, I didn't. I really didn't. I think I made this decision. I made the decision probably a month or two after my internship, which was like maybe like September last year. So it's probably been a year since I decided to become like a news reporter. And I knew I wanted to do news, but the whole reason I got into journalism in the first place was because when I was 11 years old, my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 thyroid cancer. And, you know, when I was 11, I didn't have this like deep voice that, you know, was great for news or whatever, right? He had it. That was his thing. So when he started going through the treatments, I started gaining his voice and he was kind of losing his. So when I would answer the phone, people would be like, "Oh, Robert, you sound really good. You sound awesome. Like, how are you doing today?" And I'm like, "Oh no, this is his son, Esteban. Like, he's in bed. You know, do you want to leave a message or whatever?" So that is kind of where it kind of clicked in my mind, like, hey, you've got something going here with the voice thing, you know? And so then I ended up asking my dad, I mean, you know, thank the universe that he's here with us still. And, you know, I asked him afterwards, like, hey, if you were to do life over again, where would you start? And he said, I'd probably do radio. And from that point on, I got into journalism. And so that's kind of what still drives me to this day, very much still does, you know, like the family aspect of it, being a voice, not just for myself or as a Latino or anything like that, but just for everybody, you know, just whoever's going through something, be their voice for them, because that's what you truly are. And that's what's driving me today.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I didn't know that. I don't think we've ever talked about that.
No, it's the whole reason I got into it. It really is.
That must have been the one question I never asked you.
Yeah, how it all started.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's more of a story of triumph than it is of sorrow. You know, it's like just continuing going into it, and you know, I'll thank you, Kimberly. That means a lot. That's sweet of you. Yeah, Sophia, do you want to open it up to any more questions or anything like that?
Yeah,
you know, I'm so sorry I'm keeping you guys so late. It's already 6 o'clock. Like, geez. But this is really cool. It's so cool to, you know, drop some knowledge on you guys and, you know, get back in touch with you guys. Brian, you got a question again. Do you think there is growth in activist journalists, and do you think it's bad or good? Well, I think any form of journalism is good. You know, citizen journalism is like, I think the most, I was going to say the most newest, but that doesn't make any sense. It's like the newest form of journalism. And I think, I don't want to compare the two, like citizen to activist, but by activist, do you mean like having one side? Like, I don't want to say bias, but, you know, activist journalist. I don't think I've ever heard that term before. So I don't think that's bad though. Is it more of like investigative pieces maybe? or just kind of what's going on with like protests. Is that kind of what you're asking? A little bit more one-sided. I think it's as long as it's like factual, I think you're in the clear. But there should always be like two sides. You know, I think for everything there always has to be two sides. That's kind of a tough question to answer. Tomorrow.
I know that journalists, since they have been propping up more, maybe, well, because they're not completely trained in journalism, but it is still helping with journalists, like people who are going into journalism. You can interview those people. They have the raw footage. They were there. So sometimes reporters and journalists were not at the scene, but that's also like when somebody goes Instagram live, or if they take photos and put it on like live tweets or different things like that. I think having those citizen journalists, especially now with like the internet and everything's just instant, it's really easy to get those interviews or get that footage that you kind of missed out on your own.
Yeah, and that's something that videos are a fact in themselves, right? So if it's raw footage, that's a fact in itself. So yeah, I think activist journalism, yeah, I think that's a good thing. Being there, being in the middle of it all. Yeah, because I mean, I'm gonna end it at that because I think I'm a little too green on like a fruit, you know. I'm too green, like not there yet. Yeah, that's an interesting question though. I'm curious to learn more about it.
Savannah, that's funny. Does anybody else have any other questions for Esteban before he kind of takes off? I know that do you get up early in the mornings, or are you covering late nights?
Well, to be honest with you right now, I took these 2 days off. I'm dealing with some family stuff right now. Okay. So but normally I would be night side, which is I start at 2 and I don't get out till 12, 2 p.m. to 12 a.m. And yeah, that's 5 days a week, you know, 2 to 12.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, that's fun. I missed you guys too.
We miss you so much, Esteban, and thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate you, especially being in our first RTDNA meeting.
Yeah, such an honor, truly. I mean, you know, again, I'm just always open to like whatever you guys need. If you guys have a random question or like need to reach a professor or whatever, I'm gonna go ahead and put my phone number in the chat. Does this go out on like the Facebook stuff or whatever? Or no?
On the live?
Yeah.
No, but I can't.
I'm on live right now. I can just copy it from the chat and then put it on the Facebook, and then I can keep it that way.
Yeah, I'm gonna just send it here. It's fine. You guys can text me whatever if you guys have any questions. Yeah, email too. I get it's so tough for me to like send in emails. I'm not gonna give you that email. That's my email there too. But if you guys think of any questions later on, text me whatever. I can try to answer them as best as I can. You know, I'm always that person that's like, 2 hours later, why didn't I think about asking them that or something? So, you know, and most of you guys already have my number too, so whatever works out. Yeah, I mean, the reason I joined RTDNA was to just help the next generation, was to help the people before or after me. So that's why I'm open to everything. Whatever you guys need, you guys got a friend. So
thank you so much, Esteban. We really appreciate you coming on.
It's
nice to see a familiar face too.
Right. I know, with everything going on. Yeah, and on that too, I wish you guys all stay safe, stay healthy, you know, keep your family close. Times are tough. So
Esteban, there's one question I do have. That's like
What?
part like the end of it. If there was one thing, the most essential thing that we all have to take away from out of this entire meeting with you, what would that be? In a sense that we should definitely remember this as we go along throughout our journalism careers. What's that one thing we should take away?
I think the one thing to take away is that this job is tough. It is very hard. It's difficult. Just in general. I mean, you know, you're doing a tough job, but you have to bring that passion with you every time to every story, because it's not just you. It's a lot more depending on what you do. There's a lot of weight to it, you know? And so I think that's probably what you guys should take away. You know, if you take away anything, take away that it's bigger than you, you know? It's journalism as a whole. It's whoever story that you're telling. This is their, like, it could be their last chance, their last desperation, their final whatever, right? And they reached out to you. You're their voice. Bring that passion with you every day, why you do it and why you're telling that story. I think that's the biggest takeaway.
Thank you so much, Esteban.
Yeah. Thank you guys. It was so nice to, you know, see you all, quote unquote, right? Like, see your names at least. But, you know, I hope you guys have a great rest of your semester. Again, if you guys need anything, feel free to reach out. And yeah, I just hope you guys stay safe, stay healthy. And, you know, I wish you all the best in the future with your journalism careers and whatever you guys choose to do later on down the line. If you want to be a rapper, be a rapper. I don't care. Just be great at it.
Awesome. Well, guys, again, that was Esteban Reynoso with Action News Media. Action News, right? Action News Media?
Action News Now. Yeah.
Action News Now. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, don't worry.
I'm tired. But that was Esteban Reynoso with Action News Now. He's in Chico and Redding right now, and our former RTDNA president. Thank you so much for joining us again. I am going to let you go. I just have a couple of things to say before everybody else does take off. But thank you so much, Esteban. Have a great rest of your night, and I'll talk to you soon.
You guys too. Yeah, so good to see you guys again. So we'll chat soon. See you guys. All the best.